Welcome to Obstacle Running Adventures,
the podcast that fuels your passion for obstacle course racing,
running, and all things adventurous.
Whether you're a seasoned pro or weekend warrior,
we've got news updates as well as interviews with athletes
and other key members of our athletic community.
As a weekly show since 2017, we have covered everything from
championship and virtual races,
fundraising events, and FKTs. And now, here are your hosts,
Michael Stefano and Caitlin Ritter.
Standing on the corner, lost all my clothes.
Hey guys, it's Michael Stefano.
And Caitlin Ritter. And Mikey, how's your weekend?
Pretty good. We were very productive, made the house a lot lighter, which means we cleaned and donated a whole entire big-ass car's worth of stuff, which was nice, so that felt good. You almost got scammed by selling a few things, but
that is true.
Got that figured out. It was a sketchy PayPal link, and Caitlin caught it, which, good job there.
When I bought a new fitness watch.
Oh, that's pretty exciting too, yeah.
Shout out to our sponsors. Mudgear, use code ADVENTURE for 15% off your next Mudgear purchase. Caterpie, use code OCRReport20. And for your next Spartan Deca or Tough Mudder event, use code OCRReport20 for 20% off.
We're going to shout out the $5+ Patreon supporters.
Jason Dupree, Samantha Thompson, Bradley Keel, Charlotte Engelman, Aaron Grindstaff, Lauren Stephen Ritter, Hank and Arlene Stefano, Cheryl Miller, Jessica Johnson, Christopher Hoover, Kevin Gregory Jr., Evan Irick, Brent George, Logan Nagel, Asa Connington, Seth Renderknecht, Steve Bacon, and Robert Landman.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for the support. We greatly appreciate it. And to the OC Report for being a great home for us on the internet.
And to Will Hicks,
the Podfather.
Check it out at theocrreport.com.
Yeah, we also didn't mention that we had a race today, too. I did the 2 laps of the 5-miler. Caitlin, you did the 5-miler and the 5K. And then we went to Ultimate Obstacles to play around with some expo people.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was a good time. And to our sponsored athletes.
Javier Escobar, Kelly Sullivan, Ryan Brizolara, Joshua Reed, and Kevin Gregory.
And poll results. Caitlin, you posted a poll?
I did. I posted a picture. My treadmill distance was 2.28 miles and my watch distance was 1.88 miles. And I said, which distance is the real distance? 64% of people said treadmill, 7% or 1 person said watch, and 29% of people said whichever one is further.
Perfect. We're going to skip Meme of the Week and head right on over to quick news. Starting with, again, we are going to be at the Mud, Sweat, and Tears event on April 19th, which is coming up pretty soon. It's going to be in Randolph, New Jersey, so please check the link down below and find out more about that event, as well as Obstacle Wonderland, which unfortunately we won't be able to make it to there. We just saw Peter and had to break the news to him as well. But you can use code ADVENTURE for 15% off discount for any race distance that weekend, and it sounds like this might be one of the best attended events that they've had so far, which is really exciting.
That's awesome.
So for other news stories, shout out to Josh Chase.
Josh Chase posted after years of what seemed like a losing battle, Molly and I finally closed on our first home. The work has already begun to transform into a place we can truly call ours.
Yeah, congrats to them because I've been working on this for a very, very long time, back when I was looking for a house. So long time ago. Next up, a post from Chris Rogloski saying 1 year of adventuring, making memories, and growing together. Big fan of this guy, Austin Azar. So congratulations and happy 1 year anniversary to the two of them.
Stephanie Garcia Psychos and Trevor Psychos will be welcoming twins into their family this summer. Congratulations to them.
Yeah, very exciting.
She's still crushing it. She's not there running half marathons, pregnant with twins.
Yeah. Lauren Weeks set a new High Rocks world record. She made the time of 56 minutes and 23 seconds, which is very impressive. Super nice person as well.
Joe Nuera posted 2 days ago introducing Miles Joseph. #family of5.
Nice. Next up, we're going to shout out the Team USA OCR teams. All right, let's start with the women.
For the elite women, alphabetical order by last name. Annie Doobie, Elise McClintock, Nicole Miracle, Casey Monroe, Vivian Tran, Courtney Washington, and Rose Wetzel.
And for the men.
Marquez, we practice this. Green, Nathan Green, Ian Hosick, Baxter Hummel, Kean O'Boyle, Sam Osborne, Jonathan Stern, and Kevin Thompson.
Perfect. I also wanted to give a shout out to the Obstacle Gym in Midlands. It's a great opportunity for any kids that have done obstacle course races or want to get into it. There's going to be a training for Spartan's Kid European Championships at the Obstacle Gym on the 6th of April from 12:30 to 2:30. And it looks like Libby Joyce is going to be helping out there too, which is awesome. She's someone who I definitely want to have on the show sometime.
And next up is podiums.
Lots of podiums, yeah.
We are heading to
Spartan Houston Super.
The women's elite. In third place, Aubrey Mahalajum. In second place, Genevera Gannon. And in first place, Taylor Phoebus. And for the men's elite, in third place, Lazaro Ruiz. In second place, Paul Massey. And in first place, George Stunny.
Next up is the NAS Sports 400 meter OCR finals.
Men's podium in third place, Robin Chaberdez. In second place, Nikita Kadovikov. And in first place, Isaiah Thomas. And heading over to the women's podium, in third place, Ida Stainsgard. In second place, Henriette Bartum. And in first place, Alyssa Petrova.
Perfect. And now we have Spartan Las Vegas Super podiums. Oh no, Hyrox Glasgow podiums.
For the women's podium, in third place, Vivian Tafoto. In second place, Joanna Witzerzek. And in first place, Lauren Weeks. And for the men, in third place, Rich Ryan. In second place, Tim Winich. And in first place, James Kelly.
Perfect. And now Spartan Las Vegas Super podiums. That's what I have written. There it is.
For the men's elite, in third place, Vadzim Yunasinkin. In second place, Andy Berdero. And in first place, Diartingen Kilgore.
Wow.
And for the women, in third place, Chloe Mlekian. In second place, Savannah Salinas. And in first place, Lacey Borgers.
Oh yeah. Haven't heard of that name in a while. I think she was on like the women's development team with Nicole Miracle. Now we have the Spartan Atlanta Beast podiums.
For the men, in third place, Ian Caskey. In second place, Andrew Chapman. And in first place, Jonathan Stern. Went to high school with Andrew Chapman. And for the women, in third place, Jordan Hazelden. In second place, Taylor Phoebus. And in first place, Cassandra Gill.
Nice. And now Spartan Mallorca Beast podiums.
For the men, in third place, Stephanie Olean. In second place, Pau Nacintia Moranes. And in first place, Albert Soli.
Oh, Soleil. Haven't heard that name in a while either, yeah.
And for the women, in third place, Andrea Burquez. In second place, Jessica Velasco Ruiz. And in first place, Petra Alvaria.
Perfect. And last but not least, the Spartan Atlanta Super podiums.
For the men, in third place, Paul Massey. In second place, Cole De Rosa. And in first place, Ian Caskey. And for the women, in third place, Jordan Housden. In second place, Taylor Phoebus. And in first place, Cassandra Gill.
Yeah, lots of podiums. Congratulations to all of you. Secret links, there's going to be 5 of them down below, but go check those out if you would like to. But let's get to what this episode is all about. Caitlin?
We had Tara Pippa at Ph.D. on to talk about the book she recently wrote, Sober Up Spartan Style.
Yeah, how'd the conversation go?
It went really well. We talked about the pillars of sobriety and how Spartan Race can help people stay sober.
Yeah, Caitlin spearheaded the interview, and I just recently edited it, so it's our pleasure to release it. This is our 3rd book release episode that we've done, so Des Linden, Gwendolyn Bounds, and now Tara. So let's get to the interview.
Let's just start off with your name and where you're from.
Tara Pipia, and I'm originally from Middletown, New York. I moved to California in 2017. So currently I'm in Redwood City at Obstacle Course Fitness.
Oh,
one of my sponsors. They've been kind enough to let me use their space.
That's awesome. Were you guys affected by the wildfires at all?
No, thankfully.
Oh, thank goodness. My California geography, I don't know where anything is in California, so...
Where are you from? Where are you located?
So I'm originally from New Jersey, but I currently live in Massachusetts.
Okay. Well, California is wonderful, so I'll show you around anytime you come.
Yes, I was fortunate enough to spend some time in San Francisco for work, but that's the extent of my California. So can you just briefly go over your own athletic journey and how you found OCR?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. So my athletic journey started very young, age 4. I won't give you all the details leading up, but soccer and softball were my main sports. And then around 26 or so, I got into running, a lot of 10Ks, 5Ks. Then I got into marathons. I've completed 13.
Oh my gosh.
The first 12 were like jam-packed into a few years. Then I joined the military. I was in for 10 years. And then when I came out, I ran that 13th marathon I'm referring to, which I don't want to end on an odd number. So I think I need to do one more.
Either go up to 14 or like, I feel like 15 would be a good odd number, like a multiple of 5.
15's okay. I can handle that. Yes. We're on the same page. But OCR I discovered in 2016. So I don't know if you want me to go and transition into the OCR part or not.
That would be perfect.
Okay, so starting with the OCR 2016 Tuxedo, New York sprint was my first Spartan. And one of the soldiers in my unit suggested that I run this race. He's like, you're going to love it. And I'm like, wow, that's really expensive. I don't think so. But I did it anyway. And it was so transformative on day one. And I've been involved with a lot of sports, a lot of running and trail running. And there was something different about it. Not just the obstacles, but the journey to get to each one and not knowing what they were or how I was going to get over anything. I didn't know how to climb a rope. You think I did? I was in the military. I still didn't know how to climb a rope. So then it all led into 170 Spartan races. Now I'm into DECA and high rocks and things like that. So.
Oh my gosh, that's so many races. I cannot imagine what your weekends must look like.
Racing.
That's awesome. So you have a PhD. I know when you introduce yourself, you did not introduce yourself as, if I had a PhD, I would be telling everybody and it would be branded on everything I own. But your PhD is in transpersonal psychology. What exactly is that?
Yes. So good question. It's transpersonal psychology. It technically means like to transcend beyond the ego to higher levels of consciousness. The spiritual component to it. So like traditional psychology is like the way the mind works, right? And then we can go into all details about that. But sticking to transpersonal psychology, it goes a little bit further.
Okay.
Which plays into the book, and I'm sure we'll get to that later. But it's basically just going beyond the ego and what we know of the self and finding a higher level of consciousness. And you can find that in multiple ways. Mysticism can be involved in it, just general spirituality. I choose to use the body to transcend. So yeah, that's the essence of it, the easiest way to describe it.
What led you down that path?
So the short version is I was living in New York at the time, and I knew I wanted to study psychology because a fellow officer in my unit was getting his PhD.
Okay.
So I just started Googling like body, mind, soul psychology. I didn't even know if it existed because I knew that I wanted something beyond just the mind. So I came across this transpersonal psychology thing, and I saw Sophia University and Saybrook University, both of which were in California.
Okay.
Showed it to my father, and I said, I really want to go to one of these schools. Now, this is 2 or 3 years before I wound up here. I had no idea I would be studying. It was kind of like a dream, like, oh, that would be great to get a PhD, but I'll never have time for that. And I wound up moving to California, like I told you, in 2018. And the gym that I worked for, I went for a run on my lunch break in that same university I just told you about, Sophia, the first one.
Yep.
Right down the street.
Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh.
So.
It's like you spoke it into the universe and the universe provided it right back to you.
But I say words matter. Be careful what you say.
Absolutely. You never know. So you wrote the book Sober Up, Spartan Style. What fueled your passion for addiction recovery research?
Again, another great question. So what fueled it were the men that I met on the Spartan course. First, I met Eddie Sanchez. He was my first friend. Dave Lawrence was one of his best friends. I met him, both of whom were sober for whatever number of years at the time and always on the podium.
That's awesome.
So I started to see more of that. And I'm like, what is it? Is it California people who just get on the podium? Or is there some addiction component, like overcoming obstacles and then transforming that onto the course and using that fuel? And sure enough, the more people I spoke to, the more I saw that. So by the time COVID hit, I couldn't work in gyms anymore. I used my military benefits to go back to school to the Sophia University. And I knew immediately what I wanted to study was just that. Is there something about people who have been through that sort of thing where Spartan not only helps them recover, but helps them sustain it and find a higher purpose? And what is it about Spartan that drew them to that?
Absolutely. So are you, if this isn't a question I thought of, but are you somebody that is actively sober?
I never struggled with addiction, if we're talking about drugs and alcohol. However, I think addiction comes in many forms. So if someone were to ask me, do you have an addictive personality? And if you know me, 100%. I just didn't choose that, right?
Right.
For a variety of reasons. So no, I am not in recovery from drugs and alcohol. However, I've been a workaholic. I've been an exerciseaholic, over-exerciser, whatever you want to call it. An overthinker, over lots of things. However, I do not drink at all. In May of 2021, I believe it was my last drink.
Okay.
On purpose, not because I struggled with it, because I wanted to honor the men in the book, and I continue to do so.
I love that. It's kind of a way of being like, I may not understand, but I'm like in it with you currently.
That's right. Thank you for saying that.
Oh, of course. My husband always tells me, well, he told me to tell you that I'm like one of the most sober people. I don't consume. I maybe have like 1 or 2 drinks a year. So coming from this as somebody who intentionally is sober, never had an addiction, it was very interesting to see it from like an outside perspective, because like that's not a struggle that I know.
Right. Same here.
Perfect. So what motivated you to turn your dissertation into a book? So you write in the beginning of the book that your dissertation was focused on like the correlation between recovery and Spartan podiums. But what made you turn that into so much more?
I love your questions. And I might say that another 10 times, but I really do.
Thank you.
The reason why is because I knew, or at least I believe, no one in their right mind would want to read that dissertation. It's 237 pages.
Oh my gosh.
I couldn't wait to be done with it. And when I certainly wouldn't want to read it again. So here I'm thinking all this good stuff like that can help people is sitting on ProQuest. And one person actually did find it. A friend of mine, Erica Kamina now, she's married. She was like, hey, did you write this? And she found it.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
The only person that ever found it. I was like, yeah, I did. But I knew that was like a diamond in the rough, like no one was going to find it. So that's the reason it needed to be into the light.
Absolutely.
I felt like if I just got a PhD and walked around with this title and made no difference in the world, then I missed the whole purpose of being here on Earth. And my goal is to help as many people as I can. And sitting there in ProQuest, it wouldn't have helped anyone. So it was a struggle, though. A real struggle. Yeah.
What is the journey like to take something that's 200 plus pages long, and I'm sure like a lot of academic vocabulary and studies and people the regular person has never heard of, and turn that into a consumable, easy to read book?
So because I have an addictive personality, I thought I could do it over 2 months in the summertime.
Oh my gosh.
And she's like, wow, that's really quick to write a book. I'm like, yeah, I have this. I do everything fast. I'm good. I could just lock myself in and type away and be addicted to writing for like 2 months. It did not turn out that way. It took 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
Of, like you mentioned, the academic wording, that was very difficult to make it palatable. And that's what I wanted people to read it and not fall asleep, because Erica, the one who found the dissertation, did fall asleep reading it. Because in the beginning, it was still very academic when I was drafting it. And I was like, oh, thanks for the feedback, because it's still boring. It's still very academic. So I did some more interviews. I asked the people I was talking to, including the women and the gym owners, what their recovery story was, or if they had one through a family member, and tried to make it personal, add photos, take the academia out, and just use my voice. Because in the dissertation, your voice isn't there.
No.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I read your book in 3 sittings. So I read it like before bed one night. I read it on our way to Florida. And then Thursday, I sat in a coffee shop and just plowed through the book. So I thought it's very user friendly. Like anybody that finds it can easily pick it up and finish it.
No, that means a lot to me. I told your husband, don't worry, because when your video, you had the book, and you're like, I have to read a book in like a week. And I'm like, oh, he'll read it in 3. I actually said 3 days.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
3 days. The foreword of your book is written by Spartan founder and CEO Joe DeSena. How does it feel to know that Joe read your story and was quoted saying, Dr. Pippa is highly qualified to speak on this topic?
Well, first of all, the fact that he said yes to writing it, like, blew my mind. I was so grateful. Yeah, it meant a lot to me. And then to say that, of course, was even more powerful and quite the humbling compliment. But I think you were asking too earlier, like what he meant by that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think highly qualified isn't because I've been through the addiction. Like we talked about, I'm not in recovery. The number of races I've run and how much I love Spartan and embed myself into the community, I think was part of that. And not only did I do the interviews with those 8 men and surveyed 274 people, but I've read books all through my military career on psychology, addiction, recovery, personalities. And so from a lot of my life, I've been involved with the psychology to begin with. But I think he was referring specifically to the Spartan arena. It is my life. You said I can't imagine what your weekends look like. You'll find me at a DECA or a Spartan.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And then I also saw that I wish I grabbed it before I sat down, but even the back of your book has like the quotes from other people. Yes. Like how cool is that like Yancey has read your book and I forget who else.
Yeah. Yancey, Dr. John Elfers, he was the chair for my dissertation.
Okay.
Jay Jackson, he used to work for Spartan. He wrote the book Up to the Challenge. He's a Stanford graduate. And Heather Golnick, she's a pro Spartan racer and a coach. And then Chris Culbertson, he studies, which is very interesting. I'm on a nonprofit with a gentleman named Bryce and Chris as well. They're cousins. So Chris studies the brain and how he can tap into a part of the brain that's involved with addiction.
Oh.
And his title, it's very complex, but certification of neurophysiological intraoperative monitoring. That's what it's called.
Oh my gosh.
So he's the science guy, and then I'm the psychology portion.
That's awesome. So moving on, I have so many questions. I hope you have some time. How did you decide which stories you wanted to share in the book? I know you talk about you posted surveys on Facebook, but how did you narrow it down to just the 8 men?
Well, okay, so there's 2 separate things, the interviews, right, and the survey. So I narrowed it down to the 8 men because I knew I wanted the interviews to be really in-depth. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, if I did 20 interviews, it would have delayed this and maybe delayed saving some people. So 8 isn't a really big number, but anything more just would have taken me probably 10 years to graduate and get this done. Mm-hmm. So I did that for time's sake and for depth reasons. Then the survey, I didn't want it to just be, these 8 people. Okay, 8's not a lot. There's a lot of people in the world. Mm-hmm. So I posted a survey on, I don't know, it was like 9 or 10 Spartan Facebook pages with the exception of sober Spartans. I wanted to talk to people whether they were in sobriety or not, that's fine, but I didn't want it to specifically be the sober Spartan page.
Right.
Because I already did that. So I wanted other people to chime in, and then I asked if they were in recovery or not, and most were not. So to find the data to answer your question more specifically, I had the interviews first. So I had common themes among those men. So then when I had the survey answers, and some of them were open-ended questions that were very, very, very long. I read a lot.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yes. And I don't ever want to read again. No, I'm just kidding.
Because everybody has a story to tell, and I feel like not everybody has an outlet to tell their story. So when you ask people, it's like, oh, you want to hear this about me? Like, I would love to share that.
And I read everything. I certainly did. Mm-hmm. And it meant a lot that they trusted me, although they didn't see me and it was in writing and I didn't know who they were. It was anonymous. It was still an opening that they trusted me to read that. So again, I looked for themes that were similar to the 8 men and then looked for things that were different.
Okay.
That's how I chose.
That makes sense. And then I know you talk about how it's the 8 men, but you were expanding and you've been talking to sober women. Is there going to be a part 2 to this story or to this book?
Yes, part 2. Part 2. So I do have some interviews I've conducted. It was maybe like a year or two ago. And I'm working with someone named Sarah. Hopefully, I don't never ask her how she pronounces her name, but it's Grippy Snyder, I believe.
Sarah Grippy Snyder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you know her?
I know of her.
Okay. Well, her and I are working together to create a masterclass of women in recovery. And she has a workbook that she published. We're going to use that combined with this book and then take some of that data and use it to co-write a book together.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you.
I will have to keep my eye out for that.
I'll mail you that book too when it's done.
Perfect. And then also in your book, you mentioned the Jericho Project many times. Can you just talk about what the Jericho Project is and how they help people move towards sobriety?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So just as some background, some context, I met Bryce Johnson at a Spartan race, of course, because Eddie Sanchez, the one I told you I met first, said, hey, there's these group of guys over here. They're in the rehab, and there's like 20 of them running this Spartan race. That's when Oracle Park in San Francisco, I know you've been there, they had a Spartan race. They don't have it anymore, unfortunately. So I met Bryce there, who worked for Jericho Project. He graduated from their program and then worked as a social director. So that's how I was introduced to them. But Jericho Project was founded by Chuck Etchison, who's also in the book. I interviewed him. Mm-hmm. And he went through the drug and criminality cycle for years and realized that it was broken, both parts. And he took his experience and said, wow, this didn't work, but this did, and made his own nonprofit. It's only men. It's for those who were incarcerated. And they go to, if they're accepted into his program, it's in lieu of jail time.
Okay.
Some facing 10 years of jail, life in jail, what have you.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So this is like, I just got chills. Like, this is like their maybe their last hope. I don't know. But it's definitely at least light that they can see to enter this program. And their minimum is a year. Most stay for 2. And from the research I conducted, most programs are about 3 months, 6 months, but you need at least 6 to 9 months. And that's pushing it. It really should be a year or more.
Yeah.
Because there's so much recovery. It's not just detoxing. It's your spirit, your mind, your emotions, the trauma, the shame, all the things you've carried. And I haven't even been down that path. But somehow I feel like all that they might be feeling. And I can't imagine how much uncovering needs to be done. Mm-hmm. You go into a program for 3 months. Okay, maybe your body has detoxed, but what about everything else?
Right. I have an aunt that she was an addict for pretty much my entire life. She unfortunately is no longer with us, but she would try AA. She would go to rehabs for maybe a month, a couple of months. And it was just like, she would come out and it was that same cycle of like, we want to have you at Christmas, but like, you can come to Christmas if you're sober. But then it's like, if you're not sober, there's a lot of small kids around, like we can't have that around, you know? And it was like the same cycle of like, okay, I'm going to go get sober, but then I'm out and I'm not sober. And it's just, there's so much more work that needs to be done other than just signing up for rehab for a 90-day stay.
And did she choose to go in?
Not always.
Not always.
Sometimes it was like court ordered. Sometimes it was she was trying to get her life on track. But again, like you have to unwrap that trauma, that whatever led her to a life of addiction. Like it wasn't like you wake up one day and say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to become an addict. Like, yeah, there's so much more and so many more steps to take.
Yeah, you just, from the way you said that, you reminded me of my favorite author. He's an addiction expert, Gabor Mate. And he says 2 things. Not why the addiction, but why the pain. I guess that's a question. Mm-hmm. Not why the addiction, but why the pain. And no one wakes up and chooses to be an addict.
Yep, correct.
What is it? Mm-hmm. So the fact that she went in knowingly at sometimes or purposefully, the system failed her.
Absolutely.
There needs to be, there's a big problem that we need to fix.
Yes, and that falls so nicely into my next question.
Okay.
In chapter 3, Sobering Statistics, you wrote about how 5 of the men attended a drug rehab program. Can you talk about some of the benefits of somebody attending a drug rehab program and then some of the challenges or struggles that they might face?
Sure. And I'll answer it in the context of the question I asked the gentleman, because again, I don't have the experience and I'm not a super expert on rehabs, but almost all of them said it kept them out of prison for that time, kept them away from drugs for that time. Food, place to sleep, a little bit of safety, some structure. Even when it didn't work, it provided at least that. And I think Jesse Bruce was the one who said it just gave him a little bit of hope for a little while, even though it wasn't the answer and you cycle in and out. But a lot of them said the same about prison. Like that's where they became sober. Because it was just taking you out of your environment. But that's not enough. If you're talking about the rehab, okay, take you out of your environment. But what do you do when you release them? You put them right back in their environment. Unless you give them a bridge to something new.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, and I feel like rehab is a place where, like, if they're willing to learn, they can get, like, they can learn coping skills and they can get mental health treatment. But it's like, you can lead a horse to water, but like you can't force them to drink. And if they're not incorporating those skills into their sober toolbox, then like, you're right, they're going to go maybe back to the same living situation, the same friends, the same work environment.
Right, exactly. And then you asked what are some of the pitfalls? And I think it's the short length of time you mentioned, but also women. A lot of them are, I don't speak for all rehabs, but they can be generic. So women typically who've gone down that path might not trust men. Maybe they've been through a lot in that arena, right? And now you throw them in and it's co-ed with a bunch of men. They don't feel safe, or just in general, they have a baby and now they don't want to go to rehab because now they have to leave their baby somewhere, or no child care. And there's all these other elements, and just like medical treatment for women is different. There's so many things that make it different for a woman as compared to a man.
Absolutely. And I think childcare is a great point. Like I work in a public school and like we have, like I've had experience working with like the Department of Children and Families. And like you, as a parent, I'm not a parent, but I can't imagine having to admit to the government and say like, hey, like I have a drug problem. I need to go get help. Like, can you help me place my child? Or can you help me like with the supports for my child? Because there's such a stigma against people in active addiction and recovery.
That's another thing that prevents people from seeking help is the stigma. Now, we'll judge someone for being addicted to drugs and alcohol, but what happens to the person addicted to work who ignores their family? They're applauded. Oh, you work. Wow, you work 12 hours a day. You must be a superhero. Meanwhile, there's a family at home that they're neglecting, which is still a part of addiction, neglecting your responsibilities.
Absolutely.
And being consumed by something, right? But we applaud that. Of course, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I'm listening.
No, I was just going to say you are absolutely correct. Or like any overindulgence that you may have, like you were talking about how you sometimes overexercise. Like, yeah, that's great that you ran 50 miles this weekend. Like you just went out and hit the trails. But like, what other aspects of life are you missing out on?
That's right.
What do you believe are the key ingredients for somebody finding sobriety and then sustaining their sobriety?
So, okay, that can be answered in a lot of ways, but sticking to the context of the book, right? Community was the number one result. Community connection, right? Because being addicted is disconnection. You're not only disconnected from others, but from yourself. So community, love, support, and being willing to accept that is key, right? That's why AA works for a lot of people, not for everyone, but it does, right? We're talking about Spartan here and DECA, just being reunited with your family. And although they say you should get sober for yourself, a lot of the stories I've heard, still their kid was in the back of their mind, or their wife or their husband or what have you. So connection, purpose, like why do you want to be sober? Like what's your why? It could be for you. It could be God. It could be your son or daughter or whatever. And then challenge and accomplishment, that at least from my data, right? So So you need to be challenged, right? That to get a little something out of life, and accomplishment to feel good about yourself. So those are the key elements, at least from this research. But again, there's so many ways to address that question.
Absolutely. And this is a tangent, but I have to tell you, so the last day I finished your book, I read it in a coffee shop and I'm packing up my stuff and I find a wallet on the floor that is not mine and I open it and the first thing like in the like clear section of the man's wallet was like a sober chip from AA. And it just like it gave me like full body chills because I was like, what are the odds that I'm reading in this exact spot in this bookstore a story about sobriety? I find this wallet, I open it, and like there's the AA chip. Like it was just like
Wow.
what, right?
Yeah, I got chills with you telling that story.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I was like, this is unbelievable. Like I cannot believe this.
And people don't lose wallets regularly. At least I don't find wallets lying around. And that one you found had a chip in it. Wow.
Yep. I know, crazy. But sorry, you reminded me of that and I wanted to tell you that story before
I'm so glad you did.
Before I forgot about the story again. In your book, you quote Wendy, and I'm going to butcher her last name, Janarius.
I think so.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what yeah. Good guess.
And she's a senior web editor at the American Addiction Center. And you talk about how on the website they emphasize the importance of social connections and finding positive and healthy ways to spend time. Obviously, Spartan Race fits into this category, both with social connections and positive ways to spend time. But if Spartan communities and races aren't available or affordable for people, what are some other ways that they could spend their time and people they could surround themselves with?
Great question again. So not being available or affordable, there are plenty of free running communities out there. And now I'm a runner. Maybe there's other ones. I don't know, cycling communities where you don't have to pay anything. That's how I got into running. It was a free running club.
Oh, that's awesome.
And you paid like $10 for the year or something. You get a disc, you become a member, get a discount on your races, which leads me into the next part. There's a lot of clubs, at least around here in California, where every 5K is either free or like $10.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, and the reason I'm talking about running in Spartan is because a lot of sports don't have a built-in community. When I said running club, rather, not just running, because I can go run a race and never see those people again.
Yep.
But if you join a club, like there's a club here, Coastal Running, I love them. This husband and wife team, and they're amazing. And I go there, and I don't always see the same people, but sometimes I will. You show up at a Spartan race, I know like 100 people. We all kind of travel in packs, right?
Yep.
So for a community, maybe a running club wouldn't be as tight like that, but it's tight enough where you can get that community. Then a gym like Hybrid House, that's all I talk about them in the book. It's a family.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about affordability. You can find a gym like that that's maybe not super expensive, and there's your family right there.
Absolutely. I know there's also like not virtual, but there's running communities across like one that I follow on Instagram. I don't live in a major city, but it's like the Badass Lady Gang. And it's just like a group of women that like find cities and they're like, okay, now we're like the Badass Lady Gang of Boston and New York City. And so like, I feel like if you are willing to do the research, like you can find a community to become a part of.
I'm glad you mentioned that because the meetup groups too was another thing that came to mind. Mm-hmm. And it's not virtual. You could just find a local hiking club and everything is free. And then people make awesome things. Yeah. So that's a big way as well.
Mm-hmm. I feel like the resources are there if people know where to look for them. You talk about how, I forget who in your book, but they talked about getting that natural like runner's high. And on page 30, the statistics are that the longer distant races are where people get that like natural high. But I don't know if you have the answer to this, but like, is it the continuous running of distance running, or is it just like being outside for an extended period of time? Like your endorphins are kicking in, you're getting that natural high.
Great question. I told you I was going to keep saying that. So both.
Okay.
So the study that you're referring to was on the group of marathoners. There was 10 of them.
Yes.
So the longer they ran in nature, the more of a spiritual, like we're talking about transpersonal psychology, a spiritual transcendence that they had.
Mm-hmm.
But they also added that it could be canoeing, hiking, walking. There were these other things. So nature was a commonality in the length of time, which was your question, in nature. However, the pounding of the ground of like running, the more intense. Research shows that, and I'm not quoting anyone specifically, that we store trauma in our cells, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the pounding of the pavement of running, some studies have shown that releases it. It's sort of a endorphin type of dramatic effect compared to like kayaking or something. But it's all transformative and all healing nature in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
So if you study eco-psychology, a lot of that comes out in terms of the healing potential. But so I think you also had a question. So would long distance running in nature, like we're talking about, the healing potential of that, how does that compare to Spartan? Wouldn't the running be more healing?
Yes.
Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay. Because I remember reading that. So, and again, I was like, wow, that's a really good question. So of course I studied Spartan, right? So, and I have run 13 marathons. It's going to be either 14 or 15 after when we talk next time. So I think, to answer your question, I'm going to lean towards Spartan only because on that journey, you are in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you do a sprint, which is a 5K, you're out there longer because now you have these obstacles. And the added element, at least in terms of people in recovery, is that challenge. And there was a dissertation I quoted in my book by Melody Gardner, who found that it was the grit and the strength of people who've had PTSD and trauma that actually pushed them through a Spartan race.
Okay.
So I think, and I can't prove it right now, but maybe I will later somehow, that something about the obstacles and just the extra challenge and accomplishment and the need to push on a Spartan course, to me, seems to at least be a little bit more effective for those in recovery. And I could be wrong. Some people might not want to go through that because that goes into the flow state, which is one of your other questions. If the task is too difficult, then it defeats the whole purpose of being in that state we're talking about.
Right.
And then it can turn someone off, right? So I don't really know if I answered that, but if somebody gave me a one or the other question, I would say Spartan.
Yeah. I know, like, even for myself personally, like, I'm training to run World's Toughest Mudder in June, and I much prefer my training runs that are like, go run for an hour and 20 minutes. Like, it's not about distance. It's just about like getting out, being on the trails. But when it's like run a mile warm up and then do like X, Y, and Z tasks, that mile warm up is the absolute worst thing.
Yeah.
Like, the longer I'm out there, I'm like, okay, this isn't that bad. I enjoy being out here. But it's like, when I know it's going to be like 12 minutes of just like pure running, I'm like, this is terrible. So like, yeah. I do see why like the continuous running outside makes it so much better.
And I think they serve two different purposes. I agree with you with the hour and 20 minutes, and there's no time cap. Like, you just run. Like, I did that this morning, not for that long, but ran like 4 miles. And I'm like thanking the universe for my life, how blessed I am. And thankfully I can run and I can see and I can hear, and I'm grateful. I don't quite feel that when I'm on a course trying to get first place.
Right.
Or climbing something. I'm like, oh, I can barely make it over this wall, or running a really fast mile. So it's all in the context of what you're looking for too.
Absolutely. And then going back to Spartan Race, do you think Spartan Race aids in sobriety because of social aspect, or is it more the camaraderie? I always picture, yes, the physical activity, or all three. Like, why is Spartan Race so helpful for people?
I think it's a combination, because if you say come out, we're talking about a rehab center, and you come out and you just start running by yourself or going to 24-hour fitness or some big gym where no one knows your name and you just walk in and then you're like doing machines. How long is that going to last in terms of, wow, this physicality is helping me stay sober? No, you're alone, really. It could, if you're not completely alone in other parts of your life. If that's like your space and you're in recovery, you have a good supportive network and a family, and then you're like, I need some space to myself for healing. Let me go run or let me go to the gym. So it always depends, right?
Right.
But the difference with Spartan is that it comes built in with a community that it grows. It's all over Facebook. There were so many Spartan Facebook pages. I had to like decipher which ones I was going to pick. I don't even remember how I did that, but there's so many. And Instagram, and then the population of Spartans, they lead over into DECA. I see a lot of the same people. So if I had to pick, was it more community or physicality? I would say community first.
Yeah.
all need love and connection. We all do. And no matter how independent you are, we're social beings, particularly when it comes to recovery and pain and trauma and healing. We need each other. And there's this individualistic aspect to our society that I'm not a huge fan of. Although we are individuals, I didn't get this PhD by myself. But it was not by myself. This book was not by myself. If it wasn't for my editor, Mimi, I would still be writing this thing. Yeah. So we're not really alone. So when it comes to recovery, we shame people and push them in a corner and say, you're worse than all these other people that have different addictions. You're really the bad people. And that makes it worse, the isolation. So community first and then physicality second. And because that might not even resonate with people.
Yeah. And I feel like anybody can run a Spartan race. Like you can come to a sprint and walk the entire thing and fail every obstacle and look at a cargo net and say like, today, that's not something I'm capable of doing. But like you're out there, you're meeting people, you're probably running with a group of people who are encouraging you and speaking positively to you. And like, sometimes that's all you need. You just need those affirmations of like, I am strong. You're right. Next time I'm going to come back and I'm going to maybe we'll jog a little bit. Maybe I'll do like the non-height obstacles. Like there's always so many choices.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. In my first race, my friend, the soldier who encouraged me to sign up, I signed up for the wrong day. He wasn't there. I didn't know there was a Saturday and a Sunday.
Oh no.
So I'm like, oh, of course I picked Saturday. It was the first thing on the website. But no, I'm in the parking lot. Like, where are you? And he's like, where am I? It's tomorrow. I'm like, no, it's not. It's today. So I met a group of strangers at the starting line. We had the same militaries called Team Red, White, and Blue, the same shirts on.
Oh, yeah. They have the shirts that are like RWB.
Yes. So again, community. That was the group I belonged to. So I didn't know who they were. So can I run with you? Wasn't even my wave time. I kind of snuck in. I told the guy, hey,
we all do that.
Okay. I'm glad. Well, and I'm confessing openly. So transparency here. And they were the best part of the race. I really bonded with them. So you're right. You're not alone. And so that's the beauty of Spartan for sure.
Absolutely. I find the same. I know Tough Mudder is owned by Spartan now, but I find the same kind of community in that Tough Mudder community. My husband, he's my husband now, but at the time he was my boyfriend and he was doing Tough Mudder. He used to have like a competitive wave. And his goal was, I'm going to run the competitive wave and then I'm going to come back with you and just like run for fun. And his competitive wave took longer than he thought. And he was not feeling up to running a second lap. And I just jumped in like a start corral and like found a group of like 10 people. And I ran with them the entire time. And like after the race, like we're now Facebook friends. We follow each other on Instagram. And I'm just like, this is the community that like I find like in OCR, especially no matter where you are, like there are like-minded people who like want you to like be successful and enjoy your time.
Yes. And that's never happened to me on a 10K race.
No,
I can't say that I've ever done that. I actually just ran one this past weekend and took a video of like all the awards. And there was a girl next to me. I'm like, she won. I got third. She was second. I was like, do you want me to send you the video? And she looked at me like I was weird. Like, I'm not giving you my number. I was like, whoa, this is Spartan. What's happening?
Yeah.
But it was like an odd question. I could feel her energy. So not that that's always the case, but by and large, you are a friend with a Spartan and because you go through more together out there, right?
Yeah, and I feel like it's more the teamwork. Like even with road races, like my husband and I will run a Spartan race together or we'll run a Tough Mudder course together. But like you put us on the line of a 5K or a 10K, he's hundreds of people ahead of me. And it's just like, okay, I'll see you at the finish line. Like never would I think like, you know, it'd be fun today running with you.
You're right. It's very individualistic, the races, the running races.
Yes, but let's get back on track. So Spartan race may be the end goal or the continuous goal for a lot of the athletes who are in active sobriety, but it also feels like changing your lifestyle and making more mindful decisions are the key for sobriety and better mental health. So like, is it more important that you have like that end goal in sight, or is it more like having the small stepping stones to getting to that end goal that help and aid in sobriety?
So let me clarify what you mean. Do you mean the end goal of being sober is the focus or the journey to getting sober? Or am I not?
No, that's That sounds way better than what I just said.
Okay. No, not at all. I just want to make sure I got it right. So the end goal, if you only look at the end goal, I feel like you'll trip up.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm running a Spartan Beast and I only think about the finish line, that's going to be a very miserable journey, which is why in AA they say one day at a time.
Mm-hmm.
It's the journey. It's step by step by step. You ever run a Spartan and you look up and you go, oh man, look at that hill. There's no way. If you sat there, looked at that hill and said, there's no way, and sat down, you lost.
Mm-hmm.
I don't say lost the race. You lost you. You lost your vision.
Yep.
So I'll look up and say, wow, like, why did I sign up for this? I might have some questions like, is there something wrong with me? I keep doing this over and over again, pretending there's not another hill. So it's definitely the journey, step by step, which is where the community comes in. That's when you turn to the right or the left and say, even if it's a stranger, we're climbing this hill together.
Mm-hmm.
I've met the best friends climbing the worst hills of Spartan Race.
It's funny you say that. My husband and I have two very good friends that we met the Death March and the Killington Beast. And
Killington.
Like to the point where like we invited them to our wedding. Like we traveled to Spartan races together. Like we are very good friends with them. But like we like trauma bonded over the Killington Beast together. But yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think like obviously like the end goal for them is always sobriety, but it's like what little check marks can we hit off as we like continue to strive for like continuous sobriety?
I think it's when you stop thinking about that and you start living.
Yeah.
The mindset changes, all the things you're talking about, because when you're out on that course, when you stop thinking about the finish line, you're in the moment.
Yes.
And you create those friendships and those bonds.
Absolutely. And then what tools or coping skills do you think Spartan teaches people to help overcome addiction? You talk about people leaving domestic violence situations or other harmful situations that they might be in their lives.
Yeah. Based on the survey, a lot of people mentioned that in overcoming cancer, things such not that Spartan healed them from cancer, but like going through the struggle gave them confidence during their diagnosis and whatnot. I think Spartan brings out the inner resources within you.
Mm-hmm.
They provide these obstacles that then require you to tap into deeper parts of yourself, physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and it brings you out of you. So once you do that, now you just tapped into your own strength that they just gave you an outlet to remind yourself. We all have it.
Mm-hmm.
But where are you putting yourself to remind yourself of the inner strength that you have? If you're on the street around other people who've defeated their own strength, it's not going to be there. You put someone on a course and now you have to move and jump and do all these different things. And it's you versus you, even though you're not alone.
Right.
It's that inner resource that comes out.
Yeah. And I think you're right. It gives people that confidence. Like if I can do this, then I can do this. Like, I agree. And then a theme of your book that I actually really loved was the concept of pleasure versus joy. Could you dive a little bit deeper into the difference between the two?
Sure. So that was Jay Jackson's, he wrote the book Up to the Challenge. That was his explanation. But the flow state has been around for a long time. He just expands on it.
Mm-hmm.
So the pleasure part of the flow would be, he likened it to like drugs and alcohol, right? Or binge watching TV like an entire weekend. That's pleasure. But pleasure doesn't bring joy because it just turns into more pleasure and sort of pushes, how should I say? They say I say they, but I read years ago that if you watch TV for like the first 20 minutes, it's okay. You go into a meditative state. Mm-hmm. But then beyond that, longer periods of time, now the television is like telling you, like television is telling you what to visualize and your mind becomes passive.
Mm-hmm.
So in pleasure, I think you become a passive recipient of whatever it is you're doing. Where joy, he likens it to like running a Spartan race. You have something to gain at the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, we could say it's not joyful at all during, right? And it's definitely not pleasure. If you do feel pleasure, it's later, right? The accomplishment. So I think what he meant by it was that pure pleasure is like TikTok videos that just endless. It just doesn't go anywhere. Where joy has a higher purpose. It can be pleasurable, but the pleasure isn't the main purpose of it. It's what are you going to get out of it.
I thought of pleasure as like that instant gratification of like, oh, I'm going to post on Instagram and get 50 likes, like, yay me. Whereas like joy is like in the doing.
Yes. And that 50 likes or whatever you get from posting, you just need more of that. It's temporary. You just need more.
Yes.
Just like one binging video after another, you need more and more and more and more. Where joy, I don't finish the Spartan race and say, oh, let's go. Like your husband, he wasn't like, I'm going to go back out again with you. He's like, oh, that was enough for me.
Yeah, he's like, never mind.
Yeah, he wasn't addicted to it. That's for sure. He's like, I'm not going back out. So.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's something I tell my students too. Like, are we going to do things just now because in the moment you're going to be like, oh, that feels awesome? Or are you going to like put the work in and put the dedication in and try to get to like the longer accomplishment or like something that will feel better just a little bit later? And then you also quote Matt, again, Holmgren. I'm not sure if that's how you say his last name. And his colleagues did some research and they say that most people battling addiction struggle with their cardiovascular health. If somebody who is in active addiction or newly sober, what steps should they be taking, do you think, to best prepare for a Spartan race? Like go ahead. No, I was just going to say, if the research and the data is showing like, oh, you're sober, running and physical activity is going to be significantly harder for you. Like, how can we give newly sober people like the confidence and let's just try it. Like, how would you get somebody there?
Conversation, you said anyone can do a Spartan race. You can just walk it. You could say, oh, I can't do the cargo net today. My first Spartan race, there were things I couldn't do and I was already in shape. So imagine, like you said, their cardiovascular is not there. So if you're talking about no training at all and put them on a course, they could still do it, right? It just would be skipping a lot of things, but walking, right? So there's that. And then if I were to create a program and say they're 3 months sober and there's really no time to build cardio in that 3 months, you could still work on strength because like you said, you can walk it, especially a 5K. If you do the sprint, you can do that.
Yes, absolutely. And I agree. I think like if they have a little bit of time, like working on that strength and even like the confidence to be able to say like, I can show up to this thing and I can walk 3 miles. Like that's an accomplishment in itself. Like I was telling my husband, I got home from work last week and I'm like newly back into running, but I got home from work last week and ran a 5K by myself. And I was like, I can't believe I did that. 2 months ago, like I would not have been able to just like casually go run 3 miles. Like it's working up to that like small little accomplishments.
See, now you have the inner intrinsic motivation to do that. You did it. But say they don't, back to your question, if they don't have that, right, because they've been doing drugs for so long, they've only been sober a few months, that's where people come in. That's where I'd say, come with me. I'll go with you. Or you would say, I got you. We'll do this. I'll walk with you. However long it takes. My first 10K race was just like that with a friend from elementary school.
Oh, that's awesome.
She was a runner. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I felt so bad. I was like, oh, you got to walk. Like, I was horrible. I walked constantly, but she stayed with me. And then look at all I've done since then.
Right. It just takes one drop in the ponds to make the ripple effect. Perfect. And then going back to kind of what we were talking about, if you could partner with Spartan Race and host a Spartan recovery program, what would the program look like? I know in your book, you talked about like focus, goal setting, accomplishment, achievement, and community support. But if Joe DeSena came to you and said, okay, Tara, this is up to you. This is your new baby. What would your first step be in creating a Spartan sober program?
Well, words matter. So that will happen.
That's true. Let's put that into the universe.
That will happen. And there's a few routes that I would take. It wouldn't just be one solution. It'd be multiple. One would be like a Spartan sober house where they have when people it could be the recovery program itself and then a transition house when they come out where there's obstacles in the backyard. That's part of the healing is Spartan training, DECA training, community volunteering at races, participating in them, obviously eating well, sort of a holistic aspect like Jericho Project has, which I don't even think I went too much into Jericho, but they are affiliated with Spartan and DECA. So they're official. They're the first rehab that's a DECA affiliate.
Oh, that's amazing.
And we're going to have an event here in California. They're in Brisbane, California. I think June 21st. Something like, we changed the date like 3 times, but it's coming soon. So I would create that, like maybe a separate one for men and women, where it's like a rehab center, or more practical is what I'm actually working on right now. So that would be ideal if we could do that. It'd be like a sponsored by Spartan rehab center in a transition house, right? But what's actually happening is I'm working on like a DECA Spartan program to deliver to local rehabs here in California and Jericho projects like my test right now. I'm going to train the men up there, volunteer my time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So to create Spartan DECA addiction coaches, we'll call it, or recovery coaches, where they're certified to then go into these rehab centers and correctional facilities, conduct classes, talk about Spartan and DECA, give them free race codes, like say for Jericho Project, they are allowed to leave and go to races as part of their recovery. So assuming the center is like that, where they can leave, maybe not so much in a correctional facility, but you can still...
I feel like in a correctional facility, you could host DECAs.
Exactly. You read my mind. Exactly.
I'm on board.
Yes. And there's a program now, a CrossFit. I don't know if they do events, but they coach CrossFit in correctional facilities. And Tapuku is a 7-lesson program that they bring to correctional facilities, like mission statement, helping you create a new path for your life. And their program is also, it's more like, I guess, like a learning platform. They're in rehab centers too. But CrossFit is inside correctional facilities, and there's no reason why DECA and Spartan cannot be as well. So I'm working on that. And then the second part to that is I'm creating sort of like a PowerPoint for gyms. So I want to create a bridge from the rehab and the correctional facilities into gyms where they understand what the mission is. And when someone comes out of a program, they can offer them a free month.
Oh, that's awesome.
I have to reduce the stigma. The stigma needs to be reduced, which is why I'm creating some good verbiage to pitch to some of the local gyms to say, hey, would you be willing to take this group of people? They're about to be released from such and such rehab, introduce them to your community.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I don't know if you've worked with the Phoenix before. You have. I used to do CrossFit many moons ago, but my CrossFit gym was like a Phoenix affiliate. So it was super cool because not usually when I was there, because I went at like the weird hours, but they would have like people's names up under the Phoenix, and it would be like celebrating 30 days of sobriety, celebrating 90 days of sobriety. And like, I know for them, like I paid a gym membership, but like they got to go for free.
That's exactly right. So Megan is in the book. Megan Navarro, I interviewed her. So she works for the Phoenix and Hybrid House. We did just that. We had I wasn't down there, but the goal, Timmy and I created the idea to have a DECA event with all the Phoenix members coming in, and some of them volunteered. So it is
that's awesome.
It's all weaving together.
No, that's incredible. And I love that it's like behind the scenes. I have no idea what's going on between Spartan and obviously your involvement in the sober part of Spartan. But that's really nice to hear that things are happening behind the scenes. But going back to your questions, I know we talked a little bit about this, but why Spartan race and not other sports for recovery and sobriety? I know we talked about like when you show up to a road race, you're an individual. But what about like rec softball leagues for adults? And I know like our city has like adult kickboxing league, not kickboxing, kickball leagues where people show up and become parts of teams.
So I think all that's valuable, and it's in the same realm. I do. However, Spartan is much bigger. So that kickball league doesn't know my kickball. I don't even know if we have a kickball league, but I'm going to look it up because I do like kickball. I could play some really good kickball when I was a kid. So say I had one here. We don't know your kickball league. We're not connected. So Spartan, no matter where you go, like I'm racing one in Ohio and I'm doing a DECA in Texas and another Spartan in Indiana, I guarantee you I will see people that I know there. So that was part of the results when I asked that question, why Spartan? I asked the survey people and I asked the 8 men I interviewed. So the theme was variety for different types of people. You have the 5K, the 10K, you can do kids. And DECA has different age groups, right? And it scales down as you get older. They use the lesser weights. So it's very palatable for all genders and abilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a variety in the sense of location. Like it's everywhere, Spartan and DECA, and they're both growing. So there's that. And then it was more intense. A lot of people said Spartan was more intense than Tough Mudder. Now it may have changed now that Spartan owns it, because this at the time Spartan did not.
I always find, as somebody who's done Spartans and Tough Mudders, I feel like Spartan is like physically tough and Tough Mudder is like less physically tough, like, but it's more like mentally tough. Like you have to get electrocuted, you have to go like in an ice bath, like it's a different type of toughness. And I feel like if you're currently like battling becoming sober, you're like newly sober, like the physical activity is probably better for you than like let's throw you through some electricity.
So I have to tell you, I'm not in recovery, and I'm a wuss on a Tough Mudder course. I was like, wait, first of all, I hate water. I'm like, I got to get wet again. And now like my face is like here. I'm going to drown. And there's only this much space to breathe with that.
Cage crawl when you're like,
I can't. I agree with you. Like that would destroy me. It even does now when I'm sober. So, So I forgot what we were saying.
No, just how how Spartan people say is like more like physically tough.
More physically. Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me. So, the intensity and then the challenge and the competition too. A few people had said it's a little bit more competitive and you could be on the podium and I don't think Tough Mudder does that anymore, or maybe they do.
I don't know.
Okay.
I would be lying. I think they do for their 24-hour event, but I don't think like you just show up to a Tough Mudder and podium. I don't even think, actually thinking of it, I don't even think there's timing chips.
Okay, they have a competitive wave, I think, but I don't want to speak to something I don't know. But for sure that was one of the things, was that there's more competition.
That makes sense. And then I know we've talked about this many times, but if Spartan Race isn't intriguing to people, there's DECA, there's gyms like the Hybrid House that promotes sobriety and inclusiveness. The Phoenix is a great resource for people. I know in Massachusetts, we have something called the Boston Bulldogs, which is a running group that is based out of Boston and promotes a sober lifestyle and sobriety. But that's all I really have for you. Is there anything else you'd like to share or anybody you'd like to thank?
Well, yeah. Thank you, first of all, for having me on your podcast and taking the time to read my book. That means a lot to me.
Absolutely. If you know anybody else that wants a book read, I am more than willing to sit with a good book and read it.
Okay. Well, I'll hurry up and write the female book and then send it to you. But just thankful for like all the support that I have here regarding the book and this mission. And including like Obstacle Course, they let me come here. And then Fit Lab is another gym in Lafayette. They sponsor me, and they've been super supportive. They had a book signing event for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And SNTC and my friend Joe Bala, he's like an individual DECA affiliate. He's been very supportive. Of course, Hybrid House. And then there's Apex Velocity. They're doing this. There's so much support because it's beyond me. And that's why I didn't mention Ph.D. or doctor. That doesn't matter. It doesn't. What matters is if someone's suffering and needs help, if I could just help one person find their way to sobriety, whether it's through Spartan DECA or something else, then I would be so happy. And of course, I'd rather it be a billion, but you have to start with one. So you just having me on the podcast, reading my book, and helping me share the story and sharing it with me, it means a lot. I appreciate you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Anytime. And then where can people buy your book, Sober Up Spartan Style?
They can buy the book, the Kindle version and the printed version on Amazon. Also my website, which is very basic. It basically has the book on it and that's it, which is terrapipia.com. I can be found on Facebook, again, by my same name. Instagram is Spartan Decadog, because I love dogs too. I have 2 dogs. So Spartan Decadog. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well, but barely tap into that. So,
So do you prefer Spartan races or DECAs?
Ooh.
Asking the hard-hitting questions here.
Well, it's not hard, but I'm afraid to say it out loud. So I don't want to insult anyone. I guess they're the same. They're the same family. So right now it's DECA. but only because I did 170 Spartans and got a heel spur from running. And then I was like, well, now what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say it's stack the lean start stack up, but I am signing up for some Spartans again. It's been like a year since I've done one.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe I did. No, that's not true. I think I did one and then maybe one within the year where I used to do like 20 or 30.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah.
I also prefer Deca to Spartan. So,
okay. What's your reason?
6 months ago, I would have told you I don't like running, and Deca, I like to do like it's minimal running. I like to lift heavy. I find that I can lift heavy, like on the Spartan race. I love the sandbag carry. I love the bucket brigade. Like those are my favorite, my jam. So,
what about Atlas? Deca Atlas?
Oh, I do. The Deca Atlas. My husband actually was at Underdog Fitness last night covering Deca Atlas. So I haven't heard much about it yet, but I hear that is something that is coming.
I think you might like it if you're into the strength.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that'll be up your alley.
Yeah. Now that I'm like shifting gears a little bit to run World's Toughest Mudder, I'm not lifting as heavy, but that's okay.
Well, it'll be there when you're done. And good luck on that, by the way.
Thank you. Oh, I'm so nervous.
You got it. You got it.
It is. I'm signed up. It is what it is. I just have to face the music. Perfect, Tara. Well, that's everything I have for you. It was so nice meeting you.
Welcome back.
Thank you for taking the time to come on the show, Tara. We appreciated it. And I guess to Jason Dupree, who helped direct her towards this podcast, because she didn't know that the OSR Report podcast hasn't been active in like a long time. For related episodes, episode 326 was Des Linden in her new book, Choosing to Run. Episode 388, Not Too Late, new book by Gwendolyn Bounds. And that's it for book ones, yeah.
Subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcasts. We are Obstacle Running Adventures on all of the podcast players. If you like what you heard, leave us a review and we will feature it on the podcast. If you didn't like what you heard, then keep those mean comments to yourself.
Yeah, you can like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. I check my Facebook like once a month, if that now. So I'm assuming all the posts automatically update on there, hopefully. Also, if you want to support us financially, you can support us over on Patreon. Please, if you choose to do this, support us on the website and not on the app, since Apple will charge you some extra fees. Coming up next, I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to be in Florida for a bachelor party, so I'm going to have to figure out something now or plan an interview for when I get back, so it might be a little bit late. We'll see, but we haven't missed an episode yet, a week yet.
And we won't. Yeah, this won't be the reason.
I don't plan to. Or it might be like could be a re-release, a rerun. We'll see. No idea yet. Caitlin, you have a joke or a quote?
I do. My joke is, what do you call a car that is all by itself?
What?
A loner.
Oh, nice.
And then my quote is from Morgan Harper Nichols, and they said, one day you will look back and be so glad you chose to keep going, even without knowing how everything would turn out. You will be glad you rose above the doubt that your significance was too small. You will be glad that you did not give up and you chose to give it your all.
Speaking of too small, why are those words so tiny on that canvas? That made no sense.
Don't know.
Yeah. Well, that just about wraps it up. My name is Michael Stefano.
And my name is Caitlin Ritter.
And we'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you're feeling motivated, inspired,
and ready to take on your next race or training run.
If you've enjoyed this week's episode, leave us a review
and share it with your fellow adventurous friends.
Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Obstacle Running Adventures.
Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Join us every week for more news,
stories, and interviews from the community.
Our intro song was Streaker by Straight Up.
And our outro music is Iron Paw by The Best.
Well, let's get to what this episode is all about. Caitlin?
There's
no notes. You didn't do any notes.
Doesn't it smell like something's burning?
Your mind.
No, it doesn't smell like something's burning.
Well, I wrote this up for the thing, so you could just read this, I guess.
Okay.
I do have to preface, I am a teacher, so I feel like every time I read somebody else's book, I'm like, oh, questions, notes. Like,
wonderful. I love questions. And mostly I don't get the questions.
Really?
Yes. So you are one of few who's given me questions, and yours were the best. So.
Oh, well, thank you. I will have to tell my co-host, who's also my husband, that you said that. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Good question. I forgot. I probably could remember. We can move on. Okay. I don't want to think too much about remembering. I am 50 now, so you know.
Oh my gosh.
Can be. I forgot to tell you that you're going to hear a train at some point.
That's okay.
106. Okay. So I think it's on the hour. But
hate how many times it does that.